What I have in front of me is the DBX 286s, and I believe that this is the key to making your podcast or your live stream sound pro. Allow me to demonstrate. Right now, you're hearing my voice going through all of the processing goodness this device has to offer, but when I click this button, this is what I sound like without any processing, and this is probably what you sound like with your microphone just plugged straight into your audio interface. It turns out just buying a more expensive microphone isn't going to get you that more professional sound. What you need is to send whatever mic you've got through some good audio processing like the 286s. So what exactly is this thing? Well, in audio nerd terms, it's what's called a channel strip. It's an all-analog unit that processes sound through 6 individual audio effects. It's the combination of these effects that gives you that louder, more professional sound. It's basically a one-stop shop, and once you do the initial setup, it doesn't take much fiddling to get that perfect sound every time you hit record. So, here's a quick look at exactly what you get. The mic preamp section is what gives your mic that initial volume and tone. You've got phantom power for mics that need it, and a high-pass filter to get rid of any unwanted low, rumbly sounds. The compressor section does a lot of the work and gives you that smoother, louder sound you're looking for. The de-esser does what the name says, and it tames those hard consonant sounds like T and S and ch. The enhancer section isn't just an equalizer. You can use it to add that boomy radio announcer low end or to introduce some crispy high frequencies to really make your voice pop. The expander/gate section helps you remove any noise in between words and phrases. This does a lot to clean up your overall sound, and especially so in the not so perfect recording studio/bedroom. Lastly, the output section allows you to send the perfect amount of volume to your computer for a clean recording without any ugly distortion or clipping. On their own, each of these effects are subtle, but together they make a huge impact. What you've been listening to is the Rode NT1A plugged directly into the DBX 286s. No other processing has been done, not even level adjusts. This is just how it sounds. A little later on, I'll switch mics to a dynamic mic so you can hear what it sounds like affecting a different style of microphone. This is just going to be a general review of the product, but if you want a more in-depth, a complete guide and walkthrough, I'll be doing one of those as well shortly, so check links in the description below. Last bit of housekeeping here before you get too excited. If you are a user of a USB microphone, you cannot use the DBX 286s. That's just not how these things work. You need to get yourself a real deal XLR mic in order to make it all work. I'm promising you it's a better experience. I try and steer people away from USB mics, and you're really not going to spend much more money. The 286s solves a huge problem that I think mostly live streamers are facing, which is it makes your sound come through a lot louder, specifically thanks to the compressor section. Maybe you've tried this before on a recording or a live stream. You're like, oh, I'm not coming through loud enough. So you reach for the gain knob on your interface and you turn it up. But then if you're even just a little bit too loud, it sounds distorted. Okay, that's called clipping. Maybe you've tried the exact same thing on a recording, right? You record your voice, it's too quiet, and so in your software, if it's video editor or sound editor, you just raise that volume knob on it and you end up with the same exact problem. So the tool to fix this is called a compressor, which is what the 286s has in it. And all a compressor really does is take loud parts of an audio signal and turn them down, and it'll take the quiet parts and turn them up. So what this does is it gives you a much more consistent audio level. It's that more consistent level that allows you to take your overall volume and turn it up, which gives you that perceived louder, punchier sound that everybody's looking for. This is what all the pros do. I'm talking music studios, radio broadcast, TV, movies. Almost everything you hear these days has some kind of compression on it. So obviously that's a huge benefit to your watchers/listeners because they don't have to max out their volume on their iPhone just to hear you. So beyond just making you sound louder, things like the de-esser or the enhancer section really go the extra step to add that professional polish to your sound. Take that high frequency detail knob, for example. What this thing is doing is it's actually adding high frequency harmonic content. Okay, it's a fancy way of saying it adds sort of this top end sparkliness that makes you sound more articulate and crisp. Now that's something a lot of people are looking for but aren't always sure how to get. And it turns out just getting a nicer or more expensive microphone isn't how you do that. Another more advanced feature that you don't need but is a nice to have is what's called the insert section. This allows you to use the 286s in conjunction with other analog hardware to take your sound even further. While that feature really isn't totally necessary, it's just cool to know that if you want to grow in your audio skill and with other hardware, you can do that and continue to add and refine your sound. But don't make any mistake about it. This may be the only piece of hardware you ever need to buy. It really is a one-stop shop, and it's perfect for the one-man or one-woman show for your podcast or your live stream. So let's take a second and talk about analog gear and this thing called real-time processing. So the 286S, like other analog hardware, doesn't have any microchips in it, and it doesn't need any help from a computer. In other words, with its own power and its own little brain, the 286S does all the processing to your voice before your computer actually records it, okay? And this has three main benefits. First, the 286S basically has zero latency. So this means you could hear the sound of your effective voice in real time. In other words, as I'm talking to you right now in my headphones, I'm actually hearing the sound of the effects on my voice as I'm saying it. This is awesome because it makes the initial setup much simpler, much easier, but probably more importantly, it allows you to make on-the-fly adjustments, something that is not easily done if you have digital software doing all of the same effects. Number two, since the audio is being processed by the 286S and not by your computer, this takes a little bit of processing load off of your computer. Now, for those of you who are doing live streaming, especially if you're live streaming video games, you know how taxing that can be on a system. So the more kind of system resource you can free up, the better. Number three, and this is the biggest one for me personally, you can just set it and forget it. Once you get this thing dialed in, every time you go to use it, you turn it on, hit record, and go. It requires no software, no software updates, no digging through fussy little menus. It never crashes, it never freezes, it never glitches. You just turn it on and it works reliably day after day. And that is so much more than I can say for a lot of the software that many of us use. The bigger point here is the less time you have to spend fiddling with gear and clicking on menus and messing with stuff, the better, because then you can just focus on making good content. And for me, it's such a relief. It honestly takes that much more frustration out of the process. As promised, we are switching up the microphone. What you're listening to now is the Sennheiser E835, and this is a dynamic microphone, so a very different style than the large diaphragm condenser that I was just using. This one is actually a lot less sensitive, and this is what I use for my own personal podcast with my friends. Go check it out, Beyond the Basement. We're pretty awesome. So the 286S is a tool that really does allow you to do something you couldn't do without it, which is start to kind of create your own style or even maybe your own brand as far as your sound goes. Here's what I mean by that. If you're looking to do something subtle, something your listeners barely know it's there, basically use it as just a utility to make you a little easier to understand, you can do that. You can set these effects in a gentle way so people hardly notice they're there. They're just sort of a mild enhancement. But you could also take it a step further and really crank some stuff and get yourself that like crush, highly compressed radio broadcaster, that boomy low end. And I think for a lot of people, this could add a little bit of excitement, or like I said before, maybe a little bit of brand to your sound for your live stream or your podcast. There are other products out there that are similar to the 286S, and they're all good and well, but the 286 is kind of unique because it's the only one that offers these 6 effects in this order. So for most people, this really will end up being a one-stop shop, something you buy and really don't have to add on to, which is nice. Now it's time for the best part of any review. I call it things that I hate. Now, hate's going to be an overstatement here, as it usually is for almost everybody, but number one on the list is there's no on or off switch for this thing, which drives me nuts. The reason this really sucks is because analog gear, you don't want to leave it on 24/7, so you do have to turn it off. So you're either unplugging it or you're doing like I did, and you're coming up with a power switch solution of your own. Secondly, as a more advanced user, I do wish I had a little bit more control, specifically in the compressor section. DBX has other compressors that give you more specific control, but I think I already mentioned this. This thing's definitely geared towards vocals, live streamers, podcasters. It's supposed to be a one-stop shop, not really geared towards things like music as much, which is where you would want those more precise controls. So I understand. I'll let that one slide. All right, my last gripe, which I don't even know if this really fits in the category, but this thing only does one channel at a time. So I'm not really saying that so much as a flaw, as a kind of just PSA that if you buy one of these, you're going to need one for each microphone that you have. It'll only do that one channel. The reason I mention it even is because there are other products, even from DBX out there, that can do 2 or 4 or in some cases 8 channels at a time. Now, they're not going to be nearly as advanced. They're not going to have all the same effects, but they'll have, maybe compression or limiting, some stuff that's helpful. And oftentimes they're around the same price. So just something to consider. if you are looking to go deeper into the 286S, if you already own one or you're about to buy one, I am actually doing a complete guide and walkthrough that is also here on YouTube. You can check the description for links to that. I'll walk you through all the dials and the knobs, where to set them, how to plug stuff in. So you'll want to check that out. Also, you're still here at the end of the video, so that means you like the video, so you should give the video a thumbs up. For the YouTube algorithm, you can subscribe to the channel. I got more stuff coming about gear and music making and podcasting, all the stuff that I'm into. I just kind of want to share that information here on YouTube. So subscribe, stick around, there'll be plenty more, and thank you. I love you. I'll talk to you later.